As I stated earlier, you will also look into the psychological aspect of the poem. This poem engages the reader on the psychological level because we hear the Duke's musings only. We must piece together the story, and Browning forces his reader to become involved in the poem to understand it, and this adds to the fun of reading his work. It also forces the reader to question his or her own response to the subject portrayal and the method of its portrayal. You'll have to look into weird themes in this monologue. As I said, this gives us a picture of the Italian Renaissance period. You have to look in for the role of women in society, for the role of women in relationships, for deception, for ownership and power, for control over assets, control over a partner, dominance within a relationship, and art and influence. Coming to the text, you see the dramatic setup, that is, there is an emissary, there is a party who has come to visit the Duke with an offer of remarriage for him, and the emissary is taken upstairs by the Duke to show his palatial settings, and thereby he shows the portrait of his late Duchess and describes her. That is my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. You see, here is the painting, and he says that, see, the painting is so real that she looks as if she were alive. And now it's now that he calls it a piece of wonder because it has come at the hands of a distinguished painter, Italian painter, and she stands there. Will it please you sit and look at her? Then he tells the uh, listener to sit and look at her. I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earliest glance, but to myself they turned. Bracket, since none puts by this curtain I have drawn for you but I. And then he tells the messenger to sit and look at her carefully, and he tried to look at the picture, and then he says, others, I'm drawing the curtain for you, which I don't draw for all of them. Because you've come with a special mission. That is why I want you to have a close look at her. And seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you in turn and ask thus. And look at the cynical behavior of the Duke, who says that they would just turn and look at me and they would seem to ask, though they dared not ask, they'd seem to ask how such a wonderful look came. And he's also doing that at the moment. So, it was not her husband's presence only called for that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, "Her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much," or "Paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half blush that dies along her throat." Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. The Duke says this was not just because of the presence of her husband that she smiled. Often, Fra Pandolf, while preparing that portrait of hers, chanced to say that her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much. Then she would remove the shawl from her wrist, or he would also say, "Paint must never hope to reduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat." That is, the painted, whatever he is painting, is nothing compared to the real flush that the Duchess emits. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought. According to the Duke, such statements by Fra Pandolf was courtesy, and that is why she felt flattered, she felt joyful. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. She had a heart, she had a huge heart, but it was made glad too soon. Too soon she would be impressed, and she liked whatever she looked on, and she looked at everything everywhere. That is enough to show what impression the Duke had about his late Duchess.